Yeah, you know who it is. And for those of you that don't, I am Satonius, the opposite of the phonius. And today with me, I have the opposite half of the path. I said that wrong, but it's okay because it is.
Darius. Yes. Yeah. You know that
Yeah,
you
man.
said opposite of phonius in like the most calmest way.
Um, I had a long day at work, so I don't feel like yelling it. But I try to save that for the video. You know, somebody hit me up about one of the Omnicast episodes, and they were like, why didn't you yell it? Like, why didn't you yell the thing? And I'm like, people actually give a fuck about that. That's
Yeah, man,
okay,
that became your thing.
I guess. But today we're not talking about that. We're going to talk about a topic that's very close to me and Darius's heart. We're going to be talking about the character Blade in every facet of conversation, or every facet that Blade exists in, from the comics to even television, because he did have a TV show, from the Wesley Snipes movies to the upcoming Mahershala Ali movie to just everything. This is just like the ultimate Blade podcast. So, um, let's talk about why we're doing this, because this conversation, this is a long-standing conversation that we've had. I feel like over the
Yeah.
past couple of years, honestly, even before the
Yeah, like
Mahershala.
3 years. Yeah.
Yeah,
Not yeah, like way longer than way before the rehearsal thing. When we were starting the channel, like completely. We would talk about Blade constantly. It would either be Blade, we'd either go on uh we would either wax poetic about Blade or Spawn.
yeah. Spawn was definitely more of your will. Funny enough, and this is a mild tangent, I didn't realize this until you just said that. You know, for as much as you're recognized for doing the Spawn videos, I'm the first person on the channel to talk about Spawn, and I think that's so strange. That's weird as
Oh
fuck to
yeah.
me. Yeah, because I did the animated
Yeah, because you,
series as
you
little
did the
kid.
animated series review. Yeah, because I mean I was kind of inspired by you. That's why. So I was like, all right, let me just
I did not know
follow
that.
that up and keep the mode.
I actually I didn't know that at all actually because I don't. Yeah, I didn't even. I would. Wow, thank you.
Oh, no
But
problem.
yeah, today we're going to talk about the character Blade because there's a lot to talk about this character, and this conversation that we're having. It's really based on a series of long, drawn out conversations that we've had together as friends, brothers, partners that run this channel, but also individually, I feel like. And I feel like I've probably discussed and analyzed Blade on in like social media than you have, but I know that you have very strong feelings about that character. So I actually want to ask you something. What was your introduction to Blade? Like what got you into the character?
Um, Honestly, I mean, I feel like for me it was just I think I don't want to speak for everybody, but I just feel like for a lot of people it was the movie, and for me it was the movie. So I feel like I'm in the wheelhouse of like our the introduction to Blade was like, all right, this is a Marvel Comics character from the movie, for the movie, or this character has a movie or whatever, and I am. I didn't see Blade, of course. I don't think I was too young to see Blade. Way too young to see
Mm,
Blade. I didn't see the first Blade until it was on TV.
mm,
And like back in the early 2000s. Like before Blade 2 came out, I'm pretty sure that's when I saw Blade. That would actually make sense because they
yeah.
would probably have run Blade on TV. I would have caught it. And that's when, because I started following Blade 2 as it was coming out anyway. So yeah, yeah, around I want to say 2001. I want to
Oh,
say yeah, I want to say
okay.
2001 is when I really got into Blade. Um, I got the Blade video game from my Game Boy for my Game Boy Color that I played constantly, and then I got super deep into Blade 2 because when you're a kid, you don't know where comic book stores are, and if your parents don't know where comic book stores are, then you don't know where comic book stores are. So I wasn't reading Blade comics. I was just rewatching Blade 2 every day and playing the Blade video game on my Game Boy Color, and that was it. And that's how I kind of uh and then rewatching Blade 1 a lot more because I feel like I haven't given that movie, even to this day. I think about it. I'm like, I don't think I'd give that movie the love it deserves because I probably had a stronger experience with Blade 2.
Hmm.
Um, and then to just see it all kind of degrade in real time as I get older, as I got older, was not fun. I didn't because yeah, I remember back then if something went from movie to TV, you knew there was a downgrade because this was pre like, oh, television is something we need to take serious. So like when the Sticky Fingers Blade thing happened, my heart was hurt because I was just like, what is that? And where's Wesley Snipes? And then Blade 3 comes out, and then that's just what it is. And living through that moment, that era of comic book movies. Um, but yeah, and then I played as Blade a lot in the Marvel Ultimate Alliance video games,
Hmm.
and then um, how else did that build? How else did it build? From there to Blade was actually one of the first. Blade 2 was one of the first because I got the special edition Blade 2. My mom surprised me with that for my birthday. And since my birthday is around Halloween, she just wanted to set it up that way. But I got Blade 2, and that was one of the first DVDs that I got that had ass loads of special features. Like Blade 2, I think has like two or three discs in it. And each one is something completely different. And that's where you find out you see the making of Blade, and then they have the commentary for Blade. They have all of the Reaper concept. They have so much stuff packed onto these discs that you will never see nowadays.
Yeah, I'm trying to
I
show
can't
you
even
my.
see that.
Oh, you can't. Yeah, because I have like the triple feature with all the special features on it. I used to have the individual DVDs and Blu-rays for Blade, but
Yeah.
I got rid of them shit for some reason. I had that shit on
Well,
VHS
I
too.
had Blade 2. I still have Blade. Oh, so I have Blade 2 on DVD only because if I'm being honest, I'm very sentimental about that particular DVD case in that particular DVD because just the era that I got it
Yeah.
in, I'm like, I want to keep that one. But it was also just because it was one of the first things that got me into special features to just sit down and listen to. Bro, I remember I was listening to the fucking commentary for Blade 2. No, it was Pirates. It was Pirates of the Caribbean 2. I was listening to commentary for Pirates of the Caribbean 2 because I started listening to commentaries when I was listening to commentaries for like Blade 2, like way before Pirates 2 came out. So that was like 2003. This was that Pirates 2 was 2006. And my brother walks in, and he's like, "Why are you listening to people talk to this movie?" And I realized like we clearly there are people who buy DVDs for different reasons.
Yeah.
But no, but yeah, no, and then, you know, up till now, I'm still into Blade. Uh I don't read Blade comics. That's a whole different can of worms that I don't want to get into. But for you, like what about you? Like, because I know you tell me, but I guess I don't think everyone else knows.
Well, actually, my exposure to Blade came from the comics. Like
Mm,
I used to read, or I used to buy either I think it was the Night Stalkers, in the
yeah.
'90s. Yeah, like I wish I could show you like the image. I might like impose the image when I like edit the video, but in like '93 there was a comic. It was Frank Drake, Hannibal King, and Blade, and it was like a little team up book. And Ghost Rider would make occasional appearances. That was my introduction to Blade, and I remember having a couple of comics. But because I was so young, I was like 12 in
Mm,
'93, that character didn't really stand out to me. I knew who he was because at that point in my life, I was just gathering an inventory of superheroes. Like I was trying to learn about as many superheroes as possible because I wanted to work in the industry, and I would just buy comics, and that was one of the comics I would see a lot. Like I want to say it's either Night Stalkers or Midnight Suns, but I think it was the Night Stalkers. And yeah, that was 93, 94. And then like a year or two later, Blade appeared in the Spider-Man animated cartoon
Hmm.
on Fox. And that character, you know what I'm saying? That was like, oh shit, that dude again. That guy, that black dude with the sword that hunt vampires. All right, whatever. And funny enough, I remember reading about the production of Blade, the movie with Wesley Snipes in 1997 in like some little fanzine magazine. For people that might be a little bit younger that might be listening to this, fanzines are some of the best things ever. They were like these magazines that focused specifically on niche entertainment. So you had like horror fanzines, you had comic book fanzines like Wizard Magazine was
In the
like that.
early 2000s, Disney had a fanzine too. It was like
Everybody,
these yeah, like I remember
everybody.
these tiny ass uh little booklets that would be at the front of the checkout line.
Yep. And the book that I saw, it was like black and white still images of the production of the movie. And this was like in
Mm.
97. I remember it vividly because because at this point in time there were no Marvel movies. So I remember reading this book and it might have been an issue of Wizard magazine actually. And they were like, oh yeah, they are starting the production of the Marvel Comics character Blade starring Wesley Snipes. And in 1997, I was 16 years old, and I was like, Blade, I don't want to see this bullshit. Fuck Wesley Snipes, because I didn't. At that point in my, I was discovering Hong Kong cinema, so I knew
Mhm.
Wesley Snipes was a martial artist. Definitely, I had seen Passenger 57 and Demolition Man, and I love those movies, especially Demolition Man. But I didn't like Wesley Snipes. Wasn't Jackie Chan, and he wasn't Jet Li. He wasn't any of those guys to me. And being like a big martial arts movie guy, I was just kind of on my like, if it's not from Hong Kong, fuck them motherfuckers, fuck them niggas. So I saw the first image of Wesley Snipes' Blade, and I was like, man, I don't want to see this bullshit. And also, I was a comic book head, so I was like, the fuck they making Blade for? What the fuck are the X Men? You know what I'm saying? Like that was my mind state. So I actually didn't see Blade, the first Blade, until years after it came out. That's a fun fact that you probably didn't know about me. Like I didn't see I saw Blade 1 in 2001 because my homie Daryl, he had a VHS tape and he gave me this VHS tape and he's like, you need to watch the movies on here on this tape. And it was Gladiator with Russell Crowe, it was Blade, and it was Pitch Black with Vin Diesel. So
That's a
I
good
popped the
lineup.
shit in.
I'm just saying. That's a good ass lineup.
It
That's
is like
like A plus across the board.
it is. So what's funny about me is because once again, 2001, I'm super duper into Hong Kong cinema. I'm watching all this Donnie Yen shit before people knew who Donnie Yen was. I'm watching all these Michelle Yao movies and all that shit like that. So if it wasn't like that, I wasn't fucking with it for real, for real. So I pop in the movie, the VHS, and Gladiator comes on, and I remember trying to watch that shit. I'm like, this shit is boring. Like
No.
so once again, I'm like 19, 20 years old. I'm a grown man, but I'm still kind of a kid. You know what I mean? So
Yeah. You're a
um
grown man to the government.
yeah. So and I'm sorry if I'm long-winded, right? But um I get to Blade and I'm sitting there watching it like, oh, this fucking shit. Yeah, man, this bullshit ass fucking comic book movie. I don't want to see this shit, man. When the fuck X-Men coming out? So what got me into Blade, the movie, is you know the scene in the hospital where he comes in to get Karen Jensen and they start busting shots at him and he's like, motherfucker, you out of your goddamn mind.
Yeah.
That was it. That was the scene that got me into Blade off the no bullshit. Cause I'm like, oh, he a nigga. He a nigga. You know what I'm saying? So that got me into the movie, and I kept watching the movie, and I'm like, bruh, I was so wrong about this movie. This is the best shit I've ever seen in my life. God damn. And then the martial arts was on point. Wesley Snipes as that character was so alive because I had an argument with somebody online about this. I was telling somebody that Blade really rejuvenated Wesley Snipes' career because he had had a string of movies that underperformed. He had Sugar Hill, which was out. Have you ever heard of Sugar Hill with Wesley Snipes?
No.
Okay, well, that it was like a gangster movie that underperformed in like
Hmm.
'96. He had like a little cameo in Wait and Exhale. To Wong Fu came out and it was like kind of a mixed reception. Even though I like To Wong Fu actually. I used to watch this shit all the time when I was a teenager. further proof that watching movies with gay people don't make you gay because I'm not gay at all, but I love that movie. But whatever. And yeah, he just had a string of like, Mr. He had Money Train with Woody Harrelson. None of those movies did well. And then Blade came out, and it was like Wesley Snipes is back. He's back. He's on point. And I remember watching that first movie and being like, this is something special. This is fucking special than a motherfucker. And I remember after that first watch where it drew me in, I went through a phase where I watched the first Blade every single day for like 2 or 3 months. Because I used to do that. You like me, so I know you would do that shit. You catch a movie, you might have caught like Pirates of
Because you
the
don't,
Caribbean.
because you don't want it, and that's also that, bro. That used to be what blew. It's just you don't want it to end,
Yeah,
and that's the only thing back then. And it's kind of the reason why I think nowadays we stop kind of rewatching movies because back then that's all you had. So the only way to jump back into that world is to rewatch the movie.
very true. And I want to.
Nowadays, you can watch Blade, and then when you're done, you can just read a comic. You can just read one of the Marvel novels or whatever.
So there's also there are other pieces to this story too. So I agree with what you're saying, but also, and I feel like you're gonna relate to this too. Growing up, I wanted to write. You know what I'm saying? I wanted to write comics, I wanted to write movies, I wanted to write TV. And when you have that writer's brain, you tend to rewatch things to look for different meanings and different themes and
Yeah,
different like structural things. So you can kind of you're doing kind of like a biopsy or
yeah,
an autopsy. I'm sorry, autopsy of the film, so you can figure out how the thing works.
yeah.
And Blade and the first Spider-Man were like some of the early movies that just had me like, yo, I really want to write. I want to write movies, man. I want this shit is magical. You know what I'm saying? Like this shit is it hit me at the right age. Even though I had already loved movies before then, but that wave like Blade set off that string of like what I feel progressively dynamic American action movies that would be followed up with, to a lesser degree, X-Men and, of course, The Matrix and even like Sam Raimi's Spider-Man, which is very dynamic in how it presents action and represents superheroes and things like that. And to get to the comic book piece of it, so a lot of people don't know this about Blade, but the Blade that Wesley Snipes portrays is definitely not the Blade of the comic book, right?
No,
Of
that's
that
Wesley
era.
Snipes' Blade.
It is, right? So what Marvel did, Marvel retconned Blade around the time that
Yeah,
movie came out, and they retconned Blade in a strange way. They retconned Blade in an issue of Spider-Man. So early on, Blade didn't have no powers. He was just a British dude that was like super athletic. You know what I'm saying? He was like a little Jim Brown, O.J. Simpson knockoff character, and that was in the '70s. And maybe throughout the '80s, Blade didn't really show up that much. But in the late '90s, like '98, it was an issue of Amazing Spider-Man where they turned him into what's the term? A Dampier, where he's like a
yeah,
hybrid. Yeah,
yeah. Hybrid.
and a lot of people don't know that. When I get a chance, I'm gonna send you the issue that happened in. And looking back, I'm like, that was their first attempt at like some type of like corporate cinematic synergy. It
Oh, it
didn't work.
paid off.
It paid off because then Blade had his own comic. Like Blade actually had a comic that was kind of inspired by the movie around that time.
Mhm.
And that's a thing that doesn't get discussed a lot because a lot of people were either too young or they weren't in that space. And for me, I'm grateful to be my age because I was in movie spaces, I was in comic book spaces. So those you know what I'm saying, like how you were saying like you didn't know where like comic book stores were. I was at comic book stores every weekend when the first Blade came out and well after that and even before that. So it was real. It was just I was slow to catch on. You know what I'm saying?
Mm.
But yeah, my bad. That was a long ass rant.
No, it's fine. I wanted to actually um kind of bring up a few facts about Blade too that I thought were cool. Um, well, one in 1943 he fought the Nazis with the secret invaders, and
So Well, yeah, yeah. Make sure you specify not 1940 in real history, but
Yeah,
1940 in comics history, because
in
people be like,
comics
"Oh,
history.
oh yeah, like Blade was created in the 40s." I didn't know that. You know what I'm saying?
No, but right. But he showed up in Tomb of Dracula in 1973.
Yeah, yeah,
And but see, I call him Eric a lot. And it's kind of like, it's funny because his real name is Eric Brooks. But it's funny because I saw a meme one time that was like, you're a sweaty nerd or whatever. Uh, Not a sweaty nerd, but you know what I mean? You're one of those like, you're in the trenches type of nerd when you call the X-Men by their first names. You know, you don't call you don't talk about the X-Men by like, oh, Cyclops, you be like Scott.
oh yeah.
You
Well,
say
Scotty,
Logan, you don't say Wolverine. I thought it was funny. But and Blade's Latvian, which was a retcon, another
yeah.
retcon, but a very early retcon because they made his father this random white man who's Latvian.
So
And Tara, his mom, is Latvian.
so because I want to speak to that because I think the retcon you're referring to,
That was
that
oh
retcon,
six,
it was when.
oh six.
Yeah, I was about to say, like, yeah, that retcon is like it's old, but it's not that old. It's like it's not old to me because when you hit your 40s, like time feel different.
Time dilation.
Like yeah, yeah, that shit feel like 2006 to me is like 10 years ago, but it was closer to like 20 years ago. So
Yeah.
yeah, but Blade has had some interesting retcons because Marvel, I feel like Marvel doesn't know what to do with that character for a couple of reasons, and I know you're going to have a lot to say about this too.
Oh, I have a lot to say. Go ahead.
Yeah, they don't know what to do with horror characters and they don't know what to do with black characters. And Blade exists in both of those spaces. He exists at that intersection of Afro horror, and he's a character that suffers from the same fate as like what's the dude Brother Voodoo from from Marvel that be in the Doctor Strange books. There's a
It's just Doctor Voodoo. I say Doctor Voodoo, but it is Brother Voodoo.
yeah, you know what I mean.
But I
So
like Doctor Voodoo better.
yeah, like they don't know what to do with that because for a lot of reasons. So comic books are a very strange place. Well, superheroes are very strange because superheroes are the one genre that's constantly miscategorized. In my mind, superhero is not a singular genre. It's a intersection of multiple genres. That's what makes the superhero genre. Because in superhero fiction, you have adventure, action, sci-fi, horror, martial arts, romance. All of those things are very present in the superhero genre. And it's funny when you start to isolate the superhero genre to one genre, it becomes something completely different. And I think that when you look at characters like the X Men, for example, that's sci-fi action, right? When you look at
Right.
Blade, that's Afro horror. When you look at the movie Blade, that's Afro martial arts horror. And for some reason, a lot of writers they don't understand that. They don't know how to write from an intersectional point of view. A lot of writers only know how to write from a character point of view, definitely, but not from a genre intersection. Um,
I think it's interesting too that the movies were able to do that though,
yeah,
as opposed to the comics, as if his this may sound a bit metaphysical, but as if his destiny is not comics. A character like that's destiny is cinema. It's not it because as much and of course this is all subjective, but as a major fan of Blade, when I look at the comics that come out even to this day, even with the most recent event, I don't it's to me it's not taking horror seriously. I can't take horror seriously if Iron Man is there. And superheroes that have nothing to do with vampires are there. It's just weird because in my mind, yes, comics are weird, but there's a point where you just destroy the verisimilitude of your world and you just make everything just unrelatable, unbelievable, and just simple and ridiculous for no reason.
I agree.
And
What you
that's
got? Go ahead.
how I feel about Blade, and that's how I felt about Blade 3. but
Mhm.
but it's just that Blade 1 and 2 really got it right. I feel like of how to use this character and how to even honestly, even early moments in the comics, I feel like also got it right because you because of the retcon, you get to say a lot of things about him. You can say, "Oh, well, he was born in 1929, so he's lived," and that's how we meet him in the 70s. That's how that retcon worked, which makes sense because back then Marvel didn't have a lot to, dig through, so they could say, "Oh, well, there's a clean start to finish from 1929 and 1973 for Blade. We can place him within the historical record of what we have so far because it's the 1970s. It ain't 2024,
Well,
and people will believe it."
so I want to speak. I want to circle back to one other thing too. The Blade movies being more potent than the comics. I think a lot of
Yeah.
that has to do with David Goyer, and I know he's a controversial figure in the conversation about Blade. But I remember, and I don't know if you recall this, but there was a on the commentary for Blade One. He mentioned something very interesting about himself as a writer. He said that he always excelled more at story structure as
Hmm.
opposed to dialogue. And when you think about comics, comics are very dialogue heavy. You know what I mean? Like it's a very dialogue driven medium. And I think a lot of writers, and it's also a very static medium because the images, while there's an illusion of them being kinetic, they're not kinetic images. They're not in motion. So they're static images that exist as they exist, and our eyes and our imagination does the road work for making those things move. With Blade, the movies, specifically the first two, right? They work because Wesley Snipes is a very kinetic actor. He understands the importance of voice inflection and body language. And body language is an important part of that character. You know what I mean? So to go back to the David Goyer thing, right? Because structure was so much of an emphasis for him, I think the structure of the first two Blade movies worked best because a part of that structure was intersectionality, mixing Euro dance electronic music with um, urban, black urban culture mixed with Asian martial arts. That's a structural thing. That you know what I'm saying? It's a
Yeah.
structure.
Right.
But also when you think about how David Goyer restructured vampire mythology, and that's another selling point of the Blade movie is that it's very subversive. It's one of the most subversive vampire takes ever, and it comes out at the same time as Buffy the Vampire Slayer, or at least in that same realm. You know what I'm saying? Like maybe a year or two apart, right? And Buffy was very subversive, and I find that to be interesting because that subversion can also be you can make the argument that that's a part of that structure or that deconstruction of the of that vampire mythology, and they don't do that in the comics. They don't have a version of Blade in the comics that is structurally potent, you know what I'm saying, or deconstruction of like the vampire mythology for a couple reasons. One, they did it in the movies first, and anything else is going to be piggybacking off of that. And comic books thrive, specifically the superhero genre, off of recontextualization. You know what I mean? Like the reason superheroes are able to last 80 years, hundreds of years, or whatever, however long Superman and Batman has been around, it's because of deconstruction and reconstruction. They're not static characters. And with
Right.
Blade, they don't do that in the comics. They don't focus on intersectionality and they don't focus on deconstruction and reconstruction of the character and his lore because I don't think they established a strong enough lore in the comics to even do that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. It's a it's very touch and go with Blade because it'll feel like at one moment Marvel's feeling him, and then at another moment Marvel no longer cares. Sales plummet. The comic stops. Blade
Yeah,
no longer has a solid, he'll show up maybe in an event and maybe he'll get a cover page on a book. But with the movies, because he doesn't have so much of a spotlight in comics, the films really brought him to life more. Um, more so than a lot
Mm,
of characters that haven't had their film debut. Even more so than for me, even more so than the Guardians, because the Guardians still had a presence. Guardians were a part of big events in Marvel Comics.
yeah.
So it wasn't like they they just were not there. But Blade was not there.
No,
and
he wasn't. Yeah.
and and to have just that, and then to have, like you said, that fusion of so many different genres into this one package is honestly pretty risky. That's a risk. Blade, I mean, on paper, I mean, to a Hollywood exec, probably is just not like worth the risk. So when
Yeah.
you bring in someone like Wesley Snipes, when you start bringing in the actors that were a part of that film, you get it's kind of one of those, I think, how a film like Men in Black is a 90s lightning in a bottle film, because I feel like in the 90s, because technology made that leap with Jurassic Park, and because we were starting to get a new type of film and a more edgier kind of way to tell stories in cinemas, the 90s kind of brought in that wave of like, all right, let's get as experimental as possible. And
Yeah.
a lot of lightning in a bottle films that tried to be that didn't work, like Wild Wild West. But you
Mm.
still had super experimental. Like if you think about it, the 90s was extremely experimental with what the fuck a big budget Hollywood blockbuster could be.
Or just in general, think about this. Like, so Ninja Turtles, Home Alone, Blade, Jurassic Park, Men in Black, The Mask, all of those,
Jumanji.
Jumanji. There are so many. Pulp Fiction. You know what I mean? Like there are
Yeah,
so many.
it's a fucking raw, it's a mountain of riches. It's something. It's just it's so random, but it's like not.
So,
I don't know if that
but
makes sense.
no, it makes sense. And I want to speak to something that me as an 80s, because you're born in 93.
Yeah.
So you might not have the reference point for what 80s movies were doing versus what 90s movies were doing. And I feel like, and I could be wrong about this, I feel like the reason that the 90s was able to take so many risks as far as movies, it had to do with two major forces. MTV culture, which is like late stage Gen X culture, which is really the culture of youth. Like Gen X is one of the first, Generation X is the first youth centered culture, but it's also the first generation of progressive thought, where you have like the prominence of feminism, racial dynamics, excessive drug use. You know what I'm saying? Like the film Renaissance also occurs at the apex of Gen X culture with like Easy Rider and The Graduate and all of those films like that. And then you get into like the 70s, like rise of the blockbuster with Star Wars and all of those different movies, right? So the 90s, in my mind, is the second wave of that because the 90s is really where Gen X ends and the start of millennial culture comes in. And because you have the end of Gen X, which is like diversity, um, youth centered, self expression, subversion. There's a lot of subversion from like the late, like all of Gen X. And then you get the millennial culture, that's the rise of technology. And those two things converge and they create a
Hmm.
movie culture that is symbolic of that, convergence. And like I said, look at Ninja Turtles. Ninja Turtles, the first one specifically, a very innovative movie. Very innovative. More innovative than it's given credit in terms of technology and like just how it pushed certain aspects of filmmaking forward. Then you have something like Pulp Fiction, and once again, we get to Blade, which
And then
is
right, because all of that kind of in a, once again, and not to sound metaphysical, but kind of in a spiritual way, gives birth to, which is what cinema does regardless, even before the 90s, even in the 40s and the 50s and the 60s, it's all, everything kind of gives birth to the next thing. And at the
Yeah,
end of the
it's a
90s, like you
response. Yeah.
said, you have something, because when I hear people talk about Blade when it first came out and they actually went to see it, it was kind of like something. I mean, not to sound cliche, but it was something that they were just like, it was something they'd never seen before.
It was magical.
Because yeah, because it was just something of its own. There was something in the air because the vibes were there, the feeling was there, the 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 aesthetic, the tone, the fact that Blade comes in and in the nightclub scene and in the blood rave happens and he shuts everything down.
He does.
And
And
it
you know,
and it's and that's your introduction to your main character. That's your audience's introduction to your main character. The worst of the worst fear this man, and then we go on from there until you get to Blade 3. But from Blade 1 to 2, that man was the shit. It is still the shit in Blade 3 and it's the shit in Deadpool.
yeah, because
So yeah.
and I promise I'm not plugging anything that I've done, but the reason I'm mentioning this is because I did 3 video essays on the Blade movies. I made sure that one of the things I wanted to do when we first started this like journey of like content creator, video, essay, mini doc, whatever the fuck we doing, right? I wanted to talk about Blade, and I wanted to talk about Blade in a way that honors Wesley Snipes and the legacy of what Blade represents in film, even Blade Trinity, because that's an important film as well. So, hmm, how can I say what I'm about to say? So with Blade, I feel like I keep saying with Blade, but with the Blade movies, that intersectionality I keep talking about is why the Mahershala Ali project has been stalling for so long because I think I think film culture didn't understand Blade because film film academia or whatever fuck you want to call it, like the people who research and analyze film on the internet or wherever, black film is not factored into that unless it's tragic, unless it's something dealing with black people as downtrodden figures of the system, like Boys in the Hood. There's probably a bazillion think pieces on Boys in the Hood and Malcolm X, which are movies that I love. Not a lot of think pieces breaking down the class warfare subtext of Blade, the racial subtext of the Blade movies. None of that shit. So that's what I wanted to do with that character. And so much of that movie is so innovative and ahead of its time that people don't realize that Blade is actually really the first American movie to use gun fu before John Wick, before The Matrix. Blade is really one of the first mainstream movies to use the Hong Kong style of fight choreography. There was actually American made martial arts movies that were doing that, like No Retreat, No Surrender, King of the Kickboxers, but they were like limited release movies or they were straight to DVD. They weren't like released by major studios like New Line Cinema. You know what I mean? And Blade did all that shit first. Blade did the black leather jacket aesthetic. It did bullet time first. It did all of that shit first. And because we're not socialized to look at black film through an academic lens, unless it represents the struggle of black people, Blade gets left out of that conversation, and so does Wesley Snipes as an important figure in film culture, in film analysis, or whatever the fuck you want to call it. Because think about it, up until Wolverine and Deadpool, all everybody had to say about Wesley Snipes was tax jokes, and
Yeah.
that's a horrible summary of that man's career. Because if you want to talk intersectionality, let's take Blade out of it and focus on Wesley Snipes. Wesley Snipes is the only movie star, not just black, but he's the only movie star that could be in martial arts movies. He can be in comedies. He can be in dramas. He can be in gangster movies. He could play athletes. Wesley Snipes is the most multifaceted actor of all time. Of all time. And nobody ever has that conversation about that man. This motherfucker played a drag queen. That motherfucker played a villain. That motherfucker played several potent ass gangsters that influenced, a lot of dumb motherfuckers to worship gangster shit. he played one of the first and most potent representations of a black superhero in American film. And this is another conversation that people don't have about Blade. We talk all day about Black Panther and oh, this is like cinematic
See, that's
achievement.
see that
No, but
that's that that's what that's what bothered me too. And because it was so weird to see. I mean, it wasn't weird. I was happy that for Black Panther's success, of
yeah,
course. But it was just like, y'all do know that Blade was holding us down, right?
he was.
And yes,
So
we did not have anything. All right, bro. I remember one guy told me, oh, Marvel messed up because um your cultural icon, your Black Panther, who's your cultural figurehead or whatever. And I'm just like, no. Do you know that black people didn't know who Black Panther was until 27 until Civil War? Now, to be real with you, if you
yeah,
want me to be real with you, black people knew who black Americans knew who Blade was, the character that, to be honest, from a from a geological point of view, is the character that they would actually relate to more because he's actually from where they're from. But whatever. Um, but no, they didn't know who. I mean, yeah, of course, black comic book fans knew. If you grew up playing freaking Ultimate Alliance, you knew who Black Panther was.
yeah.
But for the most part, no. Your average mom and dad, your average church going grandma, your average, single father, single mother did not know who Black Panther was. They knew who Blade
Right.
was. They knew who Wesley Snipes was. I'm just saying, it's not a competition, but it's like, come on now.
So
And for Deadpool, for even Ryan Reynolds, dude, to come out and say, "Hey, yeah, Blade needs his flowers." So, and it's not like, and it's like we can't make this up anymore. We can't be like, it's not 2017, and we're like, "Yeah, Blade needs his flowers." It's 2024. He shows up in a movie fighting Azazel, which is something I never thought I needed, and and Ryan Reynolds is doing a free sponsor for Blade. It has nothing to do with uh, football or aviation gen, but has everything to do with just goodwill towards, hey y'all, just saying we can do Blade again. And but it's messed up though because Mahershala, the Mahershala factor is still there for me. He
it
hasn't
is.
said anything.
I mean, it's what can he
He
say? But
we've heard rumors, but he hasn't said anything.
like I said, what is there for him to say? But I want to circle back to one thing, and then we can get to the
Yeah,
Mahershala
yeah,
effect.
yeah, 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 yeah.
So I wanted to say this about the Black Panther and Blade dynamic because it's not a versus. They're not in competition
Right,
with each other.
exactly, exactly.
So in my mind, and if you want to disagree or challenge this, I'm open to it. But just hear me out, right? The major reason why Black Panther resonated globally as opposed to Blade doing that, it doesn't have anything to do with the fact that Black African is definitely a factor in that, I guess. It's more of a class issue, if you really think about it, because Black Panther represents an aristocracy. He's a monarch. He's a wealthy
Oh yeah,
figure.
yeah.
Yeah, and that's
He's not
that's
he's
a
not he's not running the streets in the alleys killing vampires.
not only that, if you look at many of the Black Marvel characters that have been put into like some type of awareness
Right.
of like mainstream entertainment, they're all working class. Falcon, working class, or Falcon now as Captain America, working class. Luke Cage, working class. Blade, working class. So that's another thing because you got to keep in mind all of these characters are aspirational, and ain't nothing more aspirational than a motherfucker with money. That's why we love Batman as opposed to Superman. That's why we love
Yeah.
Iron Man as opposed to fucking Iron. Well, actually, it's strange that Iron Fist doesn't have that same type of recognition because that's a wealthy character, right? But that's another conversation for another time. But on average, there are quite a few superheroes and villains that represent the 1%. Doom represents the 1% because he's a monarch of a nation, which means he got that paper. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But Blade doesn't factor into that because Blade represents black working class sensibilities. And I think that's why that character resonated with a lot of black people. But with mainstream audiences, they just saw vampires being killed and they didn't realize the
Yeah.
symbolism of that. You have a black man who is the most powerful aspirational version of a vampire killing weaker versions, genetically impure versions of vampires. And if
And
we
they
want to
want
be
his
real,
blood so bad.
yeah, and if we
They
want to
want
be
his blood so bad they did it twice.
yeah, and if we want to be technical about that, vampires represent white cannibalism, but also, the impurity of whiteness because they're genetically deficient, right? That's why they need to drink blood because they're genetically deficient. But Blade don't got them problems. It's the
We
tagline.
want we want also to preface this by saying that we're talking about vampires because I don't want someone to be like, you're saying the way. No,
They're
from
gonna
the
say that shit
context in
anyway.
the context of Blade, Blade has always been all of Blade, even Blade 3 has been about a war of genetics. That has
Yep.
been what the entire trilogy of Blade has always been about. The war of genetic superiority
Talk your shit.
and the lengths that your enemies may go to make sure that they're genetically superior. Because if you want to break Blade down even further, black people were experimented on.
Yeah.
And Blade in both films was experiment. I don't know if he was experimented on in Blade 3, but I
I know.
know in Blade 1 and 2 they did that freaking um Iron Lady freaking uh they put the spikes through his body. And
Yeah.
I hate that they did that twice. I don't know why they had to do that in Blade 2 again. Like I mean I get it. I get it. You did it once because you wanted something of Blood God, but then in 2 I guess it was like, all right, well, let's go
Well,
science. But
I rock with that, but go ahead. Like, talk your shit because
but
we
yeah,
can,
no,
we
no,
can
I'm
circle
sorry.
back.
That was a tangent for that particular
No.
nitpick that I have. But it's just that's what it's always been about. Like
Yeah.
Blade is the to vampires, Blade is the Ubermensch. He is the what they aspire to be. And it is it is kind of just a subversion of what that even is in from a historical standpoint represents to now we have an all black character who represents that. And as much as people want to not put politics into it, you can't create without politics.
Nope.
That's how you just can't. You can't create without politics. Even the most innocent uh, thing that could be aimed at children has some level of politic.
I,
Down to the we want to make sure children see innocent things. That's a politic. So it's inescapable.
it,
You know?
it is, and I and I just want to say this too about the whole political aspect too, because I'm currently writing a video on X-Men '97, and I actually touch on that part of I touch on that discrepancy within nerd culture for a little bit, but that discrepancy exists because for a couple of reasons, but one of the main reasons is that people don't understand what politics is. People think politics is Democrat versus Republican. Politics is a social institution by which people are connected through various institutions: economics, race, culture, class. Those are all political things. It's not just like, oh, I'm conservative, which is funny because the argument between liberal and conservative is very much that it's a culture war. That's a political thing. So when we're having these culture war debates about superheroes not being political statements, even though they are, that's a political statement. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
But
you
but
can't
Blake,
escape it.
you can't. They don't want to. They want to escape it because they only want this stuff to be escapism. They
Right.
don't want
Yeah.
entertainment that's insightful or even finger pointing. You know what I'm saying? It's like maybe you're the problem, men's right activists or white male rage person or bigot or whatever. They don't want to confront that part of the entertainment, because a power fantasy doesn't require altruism. It only requires power. And in their minds, power doesn't have an ideology. It only has a physical function. And we might be going a little bit too deep with that shit, but to circle it back to the whole Blade thing, is Blade is the ultimate black male power fantasy, because he's a black man with all of the powers that a white
No,
aristocracy
no, 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 no,
covets.
no, 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 no. Yes, yes, but also, but get this though. This man walk around at night and be unbothered at night in the most dangerous areas. Blade is fine. Blade can beat the hell out of a police officer. But to be specific, Blade beats the hell out of corrupt police officers
Yo, you get it.
who
Yes.
tattoo symbols on their bodies. So I'm just saying.
And I was going
And
to, yep. Hmm.
and because let's remember, the vampires in the city Blade was in, they owned the police.
Hmm.
So no matter what, they were screwed if they got caught by the police, regardless. So even the innocent cops that he shot at that you think are innocent, no, they're all at their the whole bro. They fought in the middle. You know what? They fought in broad daylight, and they not. So Blade
Yeah.
killed a god. He killed a god with his bare hands and a sword.
Bruh,
And, like to see that in night, I'm pretty sure. To see, I'm pretty sure 19. Just that era to me is just like because you're that particular that particular film, not even the second film, right? For mom, just talk about the first one of just the style that it had, and I can see why. Actually, no, I can't. But I can. I know why. I know why. I don't want to get into that. Whenever you're ready to go to that, to move on to that part, we can. But I just feel like it's just. I get it. I understand to a degree why Kevin Feige feels that. How the hell can you top that? Because it's true. I mean, for a certain. I mean, I think you can, but if not, if you can't top it, you can equal it. But anyway, um, I get why, because that it has that just that aura that Blade has. You know, the power fantasy, like you said, the power fantasy for because I mean, and I guess I don't know, maybe it's in our nature as black people, but I'm not. I think everyone could have that. If you're white and you have a power fan, if you see because that bro, dude, I've seen white guys cosplay Blade. They don't do it in blackface, and I know that that's Blade.
yeah.
Cool as hell. So it's like if that's your guy and you're white, that doesn't and it doesn't change my anything. Most people's guy is Spider Man, so it's like come on now.
So
And
I
by
want,
Spider Man, I mean Peter Parker.
yeah. So I want to speak to one thing that you kind of mentioned about like like white people cosplaying as Blade, and I feel like people should know this already, but Omniframe is a very political YouTube channel. Like this isn't like a, oh hey, fun facts about Blade. No, we don't. No, that's not what's done here. Like I just made goddamn.
It's hard. It's hard to get on that wave because my mind just goes like, yeah, but
Well, no, because I'm prefacing that because you know the little passage, the mini essay that I sent you where I was writing about Blade and intersectionality, that's part of a script that I'm working on because I'm trying to do the ultimate Blade analysis to kind of cap off the other three that I did,
yeah,
so I don't have to talk about this shit no more.
a better. So you're gonna make a better Blade 3 because you only have a Blade 1 video and a Blade 2 video. You don't have a.
No,
Do you have a Blade? You have a Blade 3 video? Oh, you have Blade versus Wesley Snipes.
yeah,
Wesley Snipes versus Blade 3. So yeah. Okay.
yeah, I did a video essay on each of the Blade like films, like
So so then this will be your Blade 4.
it is, but it's going to be about every aspect of Blade because I'm gonna be talking about the comics, I'm gonna be talking about the sticky finger shit, I'm gonna be talking, like I said, Yeah, it's gonna be pretty in depth because now I make longer videos. So I think the X Men shit was like over an hour long. That's my standard now because doing them shits is like 15 minutes. That shit don't. I know like
Yeah.
sometimes people like you need to truncate and condense things. I'm gonna work on that and kind of make them like flow tighter. But they still gonna be long as shit because it's a
No, it's
lot to
fine.
say.
It's just it's fine. But yeah, but like
So damn, I lost my point. No, I was
no, but
um with the character Blade. No, with the cosplay, right? So what I wanted to say is this. Um, I recognize that bigotry and racism that a certain demographic or that particular white people participate in, that's a big abnormality within white culture because I feel like white people on a whole collectively don't like racism either. And I know that's a controversial statement for me to say, you know what I'm saying? Especially if somebody listening is like, well, Dr. Umar said, and it's like, look, I'm cool with Dr. Umar. I'm not a Dr. Umar hater, but I recognize, and as somebody that has friends of all different races, most white people don't like racism either. Most white people just want to get on their merry little way and live their lives and, have their little nest egg of money and just keep it pushing. But racism is an abnormality among like white people in America, especially, right? And what you mentioned about white people dressing up like Blade but not doing blackface, I think that speaks to that because there's so much there's so much of an agenda to keep everybody so separate and at war with each other. Like, no, black people don't like white people, and white people. It's like, no,
well,
that's
there was well, let me recant.
so
There was one white
so.
person that did do
No,
blackface.
I was. If we think about the same person, I
Yeah,
was going
we
to.
are.
Okay.
Because it just played bar for bar in my brain.
So the funny thing, right? And that's why when I first started talking about this, that was the person I was thinking of, and their name has two J's in it.
Yeah.
So and they're very famous,
And
a very famous YouTuber. And I was like, but he's one of the only few people I've seen do some goofy ass shit like that. And
yeah.
I'm gonna go out on a limb and say, like, I don't even think he did that shit maliciously. He did that shit
No.
out of ignorance. But
Ignorance, yeah. And
it became malicious because of his ignorance, right? But
yeah.
I really feel like on a whole, when we talking about like black superheroes existing in a white dominated space, dog, white people love Black Panther, white people love
Yeah.
Storm, white people love Bishop. You know what I'm saying? And it's
Yeah.
like white people love Blade. These movies wouldn't
It's
have.
just it's just that it's just that it's just that the reason why I think for people of uh color, the reason why I think that it is so it that a lot of it is more, I guess, abbreviated for us as opposed to them. It's not a us versus them thing, one.
Mm-mm,
And it's also not a higher than thou, but it's more of a um an understanding of historical context
mm-hmm,
of what it means to be an other in a country
mm-hmm,
where you originally didn't belong, and or a country that you immigrated to that has had a in your face, balls to the wall campaign against you
mm-hmm.
to the point where like there was a time where the Irish were just like us until they weren't, and then they just turned their backs on us. But there was a time where we were in the same boat, and Americans were like, "Fuck y'all."
Yeah.
So I'm just saying, but it's like that's why we see these things differently. EC Comics, when they wanted to make a they back the com I remember I was watching this documentary on EC Comics, and it was one of the head wanted to make a, I forgot his name, so forgive me, but the editor in chief wanted to make a comic book where the main character was a black guy, and it was a science fiction book. He just happened to be a black guy. That was it. And the Comics Code Authority was like, hell no, why? They did it anyway, but they were just like, why do we want? We don't want a black guy. We want a white guy. We don't want. They were openly adamant against it. So when stuff like that has occurred throughout history, amongst other bigger, even more dangerous things, when you start to see yourself, when you start to see a certain character that looks like you have so much power and so much grace and so much just presence, it speaks to you. You know,
Yep.
the same way it just does. The reason why it's foreign to someone who it doesn't speak to is because they've had all their needs met from not a physical level. You know, I always say like no one's talk when people say white supremacy, no one's talking about Joe that drives the truck or Todd that works in accounting. No one's talking about you.
Yep.
No one's talking about you. No one is ever talking about you. You were never the topic of the conversation. You're in the same boat. You're just talked to sweetly, so they don't you don't know that you're in the same boat, but you're in the same boat.
Exactly. Yes.
But it's like it when you see a character like I said, when you see a character like Blade challenge the status quo of what it means to be just a force, you know, against a vampire structure that pretty much is the 1%. And it's so funny because Blade 3 was originally supposed to be him in the future fighting vampires. And it's vampires have a hierarchical hold, and it's post-apocalyptic, which is pretty much Vampire Hunter D. But therein, I think I can segue, at least for me, into my issue with why I don't understand how they are not able to crack Blade today. You
Mhm.
have Castlevania, you have Devil May Cry, you have Vampire Hunter D. I am confused.
That
You
that that
have
that
you
might be the
have
issue though.
all the inspiration right there to make a live action Blade film and get on these types of visuals that those Helsing. You have these things here. You're in the MCU now. So the world that Wesley Snipes' Blade has established, which is very mundane compared to the MCU,
Yeah.
is not the MCU is a lot is a lot more is able to do things more. You can have monsters. You can have cool castle. You can do so much cool stuff now that it bothers me that you're not there. And I think that if there's such an issue, I just wonder. I'm like, why can't you just let Mahershala do it? Let
I
him
think
spearhead it because it would kind of mimic how Wesley Snipes says how Wesley Snipes' role played out in the original in the other Blade trilogies, where Wesley Snipes was that person that was really behind the scenes, giving Blade the aura that it needed. Because I don't think without his inputs, I don't know if that movie still would have worked the way it worked.
I think the formula to the original Blade movies was a combination of Wesley Snipes, David Goyer, and whatever director they were
Yeah,
working with. Because like on the first Blade, a lot of people don't know this. The original director of Blade was supposed to be Ernest Dickerson. So I don't know if you're familiar with Ernest Dickerson, but he was a black film director. He did one of my favorite movies, Juice, with Tupac Shakur. And he was like one of the early choices to work on the project. And
you know what's
somehow,
funny? You
what's
know what's
up?
funny that you say that because I forgot it was Ernest Dickerson and that he did Juice. But I was like, I was thinking before this conversation, I was like, well, if Blade today would be anything, but it was because remember I told you my pitch for Blade was not to get him when he was young. I mean, not to get him when he was already the Wesley Snipes version, but to
Yeah.
get him when before he was that as a young man, which no one has ever talked about his youth. because no one sees. Because I used to hate looking at Blade the way that he's portrayed as this asexual, stoic, just like not lifeless, but just robot of a man. And I'm like, why can't we just say, all right, that's who he becomes when he's an older man? But who was he in his youth?
So
And
yeah,
I'm
like
like,
to humanize them. So
yeah. And I'm like, because the only time we have a vision of his youth is the flashback um Whistler does, where he says, I caught you in the alley, and we see him like push him up against the,
yeah,
it's raining or whatever.
so that's actually part of it. So that's what you're describing about like humanizing Blade and addressing the asexual component of Blade. That was
Oh,
supposed to be
one more
addressed.
thing. I'm sorry. I'm
No,
sorry.
no, go ahead, go ahead.
I wanted to say that something that does do these great things with Blade is Marvel Midnight Suns on the PlayStation 5 and Xbox. So Midnight Suns is there. So yeah. But yeah, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, Blade Two was supposed to humanize Blade actually. Like the scene you're referring to with like Whistler, it took place in Detroit, and yeah, he found him like as a teenager, like feeding off of like homeless people and shit like that. That scene was put in there to kind of show the early like bond and the introduction to like Whistler and Blade's relationship. But there was also another scene in Blade 2. They was gonna have Nisa like be like his little yeah joint. And it's like I don't know if you've seen it, but it's like a deleted scene. They filmed it. And they got Blade like in a little silk robe and they got like Nisa massaging his shoulders and shit. And he's like
Hmm.
researching information about the Reapers, and you could tell that like they was fucking.
So I watched the when I watched the commentary for Blade uh 2, Wesley Snipes mentioned that him and Nisa were supposed to have a thing.
Yeah. Well, they
But
filmed that. They film.
yeah,
I'll send you the scene like after this.
but
Um,
I, it's just I think too like it's just something that I always thought about. Like before, like I said, before we started this conversation, I was trying to prep for it mentally or whatever, and I was like, well, if I were to do Blade today, I would do Juice meets like some meets Helsing or because I would want, because I feel like the only reason I mention anime is because anime is the only medium that elevated vampirism.
mm,
America media did not.
there was an attempt.
American media, there was an attempt, but they just said no. The attempt was Anne Rice, and then everyone else followed her. I feel like sometimes, but
Well, no, there was Bram Stoker's Dracula. There was Interview with a Vampire. There was Blade, Buffy. I think what
and
America's relationship with vampirism is more sexual,
yeah,
whereas anime's relationship with vampirism is more mythic. It seems.
it's
It
it's
seems.
it's it's it's
I could be wrong.
it's mythic. No, it's everything. It's all of it though. It is mythic, but it's also sexual, but it's
Yeah, I was gonna say
also
yeah. Of course, because anime.
outlandish, right? But it's also outlandish. It's also it's kind of, and I know this is a bit of a tangent, but it's not really a tangent, but it's just more an example of what I mean is when I say outlandish, and when I reason why I mention anime influences, because when you're dealing with cinema, I feel like it needs to be the best of the best of what you can get on screen. And yes, you still have to have what works on screen, but take something like Deadpool versus Wolverine, for example, like as a recent example, like from the fights to the creativity of how characters move. Even when Wolverine was fighting Deadpool and he was actually moving on all fours,
Yeah, that was dope.
sometimes you have to embrace outlandish. And the only people that do that is the Japanese when it comes to vampirism. And
So, hmm.
I think that when you take those elements and you mix those elements to tell a story about a Blade in his youth, Eric in his youth, trying to find Deacon Frost, maybe throughout the time, maybe when he does join the gang of vampire hunters that he joins, when he does meet Jamal Afari, because I would never use Whistler, I would use Jamal Afari, who is, if people don't know who Jamal Afari is, Jamal Afari was a veteran vampire hunter who then, when he retired, he just became a jazz musician He's the reason why Blade can fight the way he can fight is because of Jamal. So just saying, these are things that I just feel like are lost. Blade is also British, and no one thought to get a black British actor. You went straight to Mahershala. Is it, or you didn't think that maybe to tell Mahershala to use a British accent? I remember he was talking about before he actually filmed when he filmed his Eternal scene. He was talking about how he had to find the voice for Blade because even though you didn't see him, he still wanted that presence to be there. And he was like, we went over that line. Are you sure you want to do that, Mr. Whitman? Like however many times or whatever. And then I'm just like, you didn't think that because Eric is British, to just have a British accent, that would set you apart from Wesley Snipes right there. Wesley
That's
Snipes'
true.
Blade is American. He's not British, but Blade is a British man. So he's from the. It's just. It's just. I don't. It's just. It's so weird that when it comes to Blade, there's this. There's this loss of just understanding from the movies to the comics. Blade 2 is not just a a sexy, you know, cool adventure or whatnot. Blade 2 is also about the power dynamics and family structure, and once again genetics. And I just don't understand why this stuff isn't. Why did only one group of people get it and then everyone else just didn't?
So my theory on that is, and it's not even a theory, it's a known fact. Like Mahershala Ali reached out to them to do Blade. Like that's what we know. We know that Marvel didn't go to
That
him.
means that they never had a plan to do Blade.
Yeah, or they might have had a plan to do Blade, I think, but I don't think they had a plan for Mahershala to come in and because these are like lost interviews, or they might not be lost, but I recall somewhere there's an interview, several interviews of Wesley Snipes like, yeah, I've been talking to Marvel to try to
Yeah,
figure out
yeah. No,
Blade,
you're right. You're
the
right.
Blade thing, and this is like a couple years before Mahershala Ali. This
Yep.
is like around the time this is before Endgame came out. This is before like Infinity War and shit, maybe like a year before that, where like Wesley Snipes saying like, yeah, I've been talking with the Marvel guys because he has a book. It's what is it, Talons of the Blade or some shit like that. And somewhere in his promotion run for that book, I'm talking about Wesley Snipes. They were asking him like, "Oh, are you ever going to do Blade again?" He was like, "Yeah, I was talking to the Marvel guys," and I'm like, "Okay." And then Mahershala wins the Oscar, and then, oh, this is our new Blade. And I think that part of it, the whole Mahershala winning the Oscar and coming in, that's something that's like a trait that Marvel does that people don't speak about. People could talk all day about like the Marvel curse or Marvel movies being bad or Marvel being not cinema, but Marvel movies have always gone out of their way to get the very best actors, the most credentialed
Yeah, they
actors,
make sure
some
they
of the
hire
most,
talent.
yeah, to be in these movies. Oh, you
Yep.
gonna act like Robert Downey Jr. It wasn't an Oscar-nominated actor before he was in fucking Iron Man? Like this is
Yep.
Chadwick Boseman, Scarlett Johansson is an Oscar award-winning actress. Like fucking what's the other Bama? Hawkeye. That motherfucker. These are all A-list actors. These are all high-ranking, top of their craft actors. So Mahershala Ali benefited from being very relevant, far more relevant than Wesley Snipes at that time, and being an Oscar award-winning actor. So if that's like a Brad Pitt, I'm like, yo, I want to do a Marvel movie. They gonna talk to that motherfucker. Like they
Oh
gonna
yeah,
figure
Brad
something
Pitt
out.
was like, guys, I want to be Ghost Rider. They're gonna
Yeah.
be like, oh yeah, 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 yeah. You can be Johnny. You can, yes, yes, God, yes.
And regardless,
I I want
regardless
Ryan
of if
Gosling.
there's a script in play. My bad, I didn't mean to cut you off, but
Oh no, you're
they
good. I
gonna,
understand.
yeah, no, they, yeah.
You know, it's just but you weren't prepared. You weren't prepared. That's what annoys me. You were not prepared for this. You weren't
Mm-mm.
prepared to really do this. You weren't prepared to bring this character to the big screen for real. Back to the
No.
big screen.
And the funny thing is, I think they were, but I think Mahershala like caused them to make a detour and go in a
No,
different direction.
no, no, I don't. I'm sorry. Because the stuff because remember the I don't know, these are rumored, but I'm pretty sure that they're legit. I don't know, but I just remember the other stories that came out about what Blade was supposed to be
Yeah, with like the daughter and all
before
of that.
yeah, and
But that
because they had another person in charge of Blade before the guy that directed Sound of Metal, before he got on, there was another woman who was in charge, and I think she was the first person to get on. I don't know
I
if it was
remember
Nia DaCosta. I don't think it was Nia
she
DaCosta.
she came later. But
Yeah,
so
Nia
hold up.
DaCosta came later.
So the reason I'm saying I think they had a plan is because once again they were talking to Wesley Snipes about this
Yeah,
years
I
years
think
before.
no. I think Wesley Snipes had a plan
No, I don't think.
because it.
No,
I
I
don't
think
know.
Wesley Snipes had a plan, but I don't think Wesley Snipes approached them. And I could be wrong about that. I feel like I don't know. Like my bad. Go ahead. Talk your shit. My
No,
bad.
no, 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 no. No, I agree. I just think that also we have to look at it for what it is. A character like that no longer fits within the parameters of the MCU. He doesn't. Because how do you explain where all of the paranormal has been?
Doctor
How do you
Strange.
explain that? Or it was or the Agatha TV show.
Yeah,
That's my theory is as to how they start to explain. You also had Werewolf by Night that also just said no, we don't explain it. It's just there. It's just a thing that's happened. We no longer explain. We're not going to explain it. It's just because
so
honestly, to be fair, that's also maybe the best decision. You don't. You just say vampires are here.
yeah, because I mean,
Which but
there's so no, you got to
no, go
go.
ahead. No, you can go ahead.
No, all I was gonna say is so, but there's a Marvel Cinematic Universe where Shang-Chi, Doctor Strange, and Captain America all exist.
Yeah,
Sometimes living in the same city, like you know
yeah,
what I'm saying.
yeah.
So
I agree.
I I feel like that's it's not a stretch to introduce Blade because once again we're dealing with comic books. We're not dealing with
It's
like
also it's
Schindler's
also
List.
it's also now I'm just like how do you yeah well that's how let's do something different with Schindler's List. Like what do you mean? Oh sorry that was funny
Yeah, because
but
you.
no what I wanted to say is I um think that it's not impossible,
Mm-mm.
but like I told you, things are not being utilized. They are not thinking about who Eric is. I'm sorry, it doesn't feel like it because if they were doing this, and people can disagree or they can agree or disagree, but I'm like, if Marvel was doing this, you would have cracked it by now. You're not thinking about who Eric is who is he? You don't ask who is Eric. You don't ask that.
So,
Also I hear an echo.
oh my bad, sorry. Oh well, I haven't made any adjustments to anything,
Oh.
but
Oh, it's
um,
fine. It's fine. But I was going to say you don't ask who is he. And what I mean by that is, okay, Eric was born in 1929, and it's 2024. In Marvel time, I think in Marvel's in the MCU, I think it's 2026 or 2027 in the MCU. But it's 2020. It's whatever year it is in the MCU right now. Blade is a long-lived character. You could do stories about you could make a story about him fighting through the ages up until now. You could make you could if he's so if vampires haven't been seen in Blade is in the Shadows, you could do a story that takes place somewhere that's not even in the vicinity of the Avengers or any of that stuff. Somewhere, I don't know, in Mexico or somewhere else or anywhere. That's just more remote. I just think that it is or if or you need to just lean into the supernatural. Just lean full force into the supernatural
I
and introduce and make Blade someone that doesn't just fight vampires, which is also something I think should have been happened in comics, where it's like no, his rogues aren't just vampires. His rogues are now like no, Blade fights other paranormal entities too. Blades Blade is just as much an enemy to Nightmare as Doctor Strange is an enemy to Nightmare, or Blade also talks to Doctor Voodoo, or also talks to Doctor Doom sometimes, because Doctor Doom is a supernatural villain, by the way. Just saying, but you know, let him mingle.
Hmm.
No one lets him mingle, and when he mingles, it's only in like events. It's never like, oh, Blade by himself is mingling. That's great. Yes, let's do more of this. Nah, he fights vampires, guys. That's all he does. We don't know how to crack this character. It's the same stupid argument people make when they say, oh, Superman is hard to do. No, he's not. You just have to know who he is,
No,
and you don't.
you definitely do. But I think so there are a lot of different ways to approach what you're discussing because
I'm
I
sorry for the
hear a
rant.
lot of you say it one more time.
I'm sorry for the rant.
No, we are here to rant, so there ain't really no need to apologize. Like, but one recurring thing I think I hear from you because for people that don't know, me and Darius we actually represent different genres. We have like I wouldn't call it. Can we call it expertise? I'm a martial arts guy, and you're more of
I
a
wouldn't call it
supernatural
expertise.
horror guy, right? So Blade exists, ironically, at both of those intersections. And I hear a lot of you talking about the supernatural and leaning into that, and I agree with that. But there's still the action martial arts aspect of that character that I think has become a vital part of Blade, but not the sole defining trait. And
That's the, but I agree. But
well,
my thing is all of that comes too.
no, it does. So what I was gonna say is and this goes back to the Mahershala Ali thing, right? I really think that Mahershala Ali was just miscast. He's not an action guy, Like
Yeah, he's not.
it's like when they cast Finn Jones as Iron Fist, and I remember saying like, why are you not casting a martial artist to play this character who is a martial artist? That's an important part of his character. The fact that he knows and is defined by martial arts. Why the fuck you can get a dude from Game of Thrones that look like Hyde from that '70s show? Fuck that dude. But you know what I'm saying? Like there's a certain conversation that needs to be had, not just about the specific genre that the major appeal of Wesley Snipes as Blade is the fact that Wesley Snipes is such a multifaceted being of creation. Like there's Denzel Washington couldn't play Blade, and he's considered one of the best actors of a generation, right? Fucking, and I know you'll probably disagree. I don't think John Boyega could play Blade for real. He could play a version of Blade. All of these actors can play a version of
No, no,
Blade.
no, I agree.
Not,
Like when
not,
every time I think of Blade, my Blade has always been John Boyega. And honestly, it's for very superficial reasons. It's one, he's young, two, he's black, and
and he's
three, he's
British.
British.
Yeah, but
But
once
also,
again,
he's the only young black British guy that I know. But I do know of Damson Idris now.
yeah, from
He's
Snowfall, I'm hip, but
yeah. But
but
even then, I'm sorry. What I mean to say is,
but
even then, I'm actually to your point that you're mentioning. It's still going to feel like an imitation of Wesley Snipes.
it's either going to feel like an imitation or something incredibly left field because
Yeah.
the one thing that superheroes have over other genres, and I mentioned this earlier, is that superhero is an intersectional genre. It's the one form of literature where every single type of genre has been thrown at the wall and stuck together and existed on the same wall and somehow worked. With Captain
Yes.
America, we're dealing with action, adventure, political intrigue, and shit like that. With Wolverine alone, you're dealing with two or three different genres. You know what I'm saying? You got sci-fi, you have like adventure,
Drama,
drama,
melodrama.
romance. So what makes Blade so difficult to crack is that they haven't there's not a human being in existence right now that we know of that can embrace the horror bestial aspects because you got to look at Wesley Snipes with that part of it too. Wesley Snipes was a beast when he played. Motherfucker was growling when he was playing Blade. He
Yeah.
was he was very animalistic when he played that
Yeah.
character, but he was
Every
also
like his the blood baptism scene in Blade 2 when he rises out of the water and
yeah.
he's just that nigga is like, I mean, that man is just ready. And that, like I said, how do you match that aura? Who do you
You
match that
can't.
aura with?
You can't. It's a similar
Who?
thing with it's a similar
Well,
thing. What I would say is a
I'm
similar.
gonna say this:
No, go ahead.
if Idris was younger, maybe Idris could have did it.
Oh,
I'm
Idris
gonna
Elba.
take that to the bank. I'm gonna take it
Yeah.
to the bank that maybe that was Idris was supposed to be up next, and we probably missed the boat in this timeline, and it was supposed to be Idris, but this timeline didn't work out that way, so we didn't get Idris, and then we got Mahershala,
Yeah, because Idris is a
which
martial
for how
artist.
long we have, yeah, but for however long we have, and you know what, Idris is a martial artist. Idris is a DJ. He's a musician. He's a classically trained actor.
British.
He
Oh,
was he was he's British. He was
yeah.
dope in Hobbs and Shaw, which is the only Fast and Furious movie I've seen.
I've seen all of them.
So
But, yeah.
just saying,
He
at one
also
in one era, it could have been him.
and I and looking at like Idris Elba's body of work, you see traces of a Blade character. Like Blade, Idris Elba's version of Blade exists somewhere at the intersection of the character he played in Pacific Rim, um, and Stringer Bell in my mind. And I know that's a
I
very
think it's three. I think it's the character he played in Pacific Rim, Stringer Bell, and
Bloodshot. Forgot about that one.
no, I was gonna say. So do you remember that movie where he's like this criminal who like attacks this woman in her home?
Yes, actually, I kind of do. I know I can't think of the name of that joint.
I feel like he's in between those parts where he's also a villain because that movie and then Hobbs and Shaw, like, because you still need Blade is still very not mean. He's mean. Yeah, I'm gonna say he's mean. Blade is a mean person. Not always mean, but if you're a vampire, he's probably gonna be mean, and you need that meanness. That just like, no, I don't care that 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 you said please don't hurt me. I'm gonna fucking kill you. Like, also
Yeah,
drip. How Blade has a
that
lot of drip. He went out of his way to change into a whole fucking black vest. I love that fucking vest that he had. Because he took away. He didn't wear the trench coat when he went to invade Deacon Frost's lair. He just wore this black vest,
had the bomber
and he had the
jacket.
Uzi. Yeah, he had the bomber jacket and the fucking Uzis and shit. Man,
Yeah, see, and that's what I'm saying. Like that's why when I talk about Blade and intersectionality, and people look at me like I'm crazy, I'm like maybe y'all just fucking stupid. Like just keep that shit a fucking just keep that shit a string bean and two fucking Cheerios. Like
also, you got to think about the cinema. You have to think about the cinematography of those first two films. What they did with the cinematography. Blade took place in a lot of practical areas. They don't do that anymore in Marvel. So the cinematography you could have, the aesthetic you could have, automatically is now gone. Unless you get a director who wants to do that, or who is. Let me backtrack. Unless you get a director who's allowed to do that,
yeah,
and Marvel allows them to do that. Because I
yeah.
guarantee you, a lot of those directors wanted. If you look at early Marvel movies, oh, those directors had their way. If Kenneth Branagh tried to direct Thor today, it would not be Thor
I
how
mean
Thor was back then.
that's why he's not directing Thor now. But
Yeah,
yeah, you
like
definitely
like I'm just saying, like today, it's just you wouldn't get Blade 1 and Blade 2 today. It will look so weird. It probably wouldn't even look because there's just the aesthetic of those two films. Del Toro's aesthetic. Blade 2 is Del Toro's aesthetic. Del Toro uses a lot of oranges. That's why Blade 2 has that orange hue to it, that kind of those pale blues, raining scenes. Del Toro loves that shit. All of
yeah,
his movies look like that. Hellboy looks like Blade 2. Freaking um 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 damn, I forgot. The name is my favorite. Oh. But yeah, Hellboy looks like Blade 2. Fucking what is that movie? God, I'm sorry. Yeah, The Devil's Backbone looks like Blade 2. Pan's Labyrinth looks like Blade 2.
I would
A
say
lot of
Pan's like,
early,
yeah,
yeah, a lot
yeah,
of
like
night, a lot of early Del Toro stuff, including Blade 2, has that orange, dark shadows, very pale lights kind of feel that made Blade 2 have that aesthetic. Blade 1 has that very, I know this is the only way I can describe it, has that very ashy techno 90s grungy hip hop vibe to it. And it's a
it
mixture of
does.
all of those musical genres,
I
especially
was
the
saying
album.
it
It's like
also.
this. Mm.
No, no, go ahead. My bad. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to keep
No, no,
cutting.
no, no, I'm even I'm getting I'm remembering like how much went into this because
Well,
you need
let,
the album too to because I remember when they first and when Marvel first announced they were doing Blade, I was like, what is the music going to sound like? That's one of my first inclinations. I was like, all right, so what's the music going to sound like? Do y'all know what this film sounds like? I know what Blade 1 sounds like. I know what Blade 2 sounds like. I even know what Blade 3 sounds like.
once
Do
again,
you know what this is going to sound like?
intersectionality. Dog, the joint with Most Def and what's that group?
I
Massive
guess
Attack.
that. Yeah. Yeah.
Dog, like that fusion. Because once again,
Yeah.
that's what Blade is. Blade is a fusion of every type of fringe genre of music, cinema, all that shit. And once again,
Yes.
never discussed in that way. Because once again, motherfuckers, the film students like Lindsay Ellis not gonna make no video essay on no motherfucking on the intersectionality of Blade and hip hop and techno and horror and martial arts and black exploitation. She's not gonna do that shit, and that's very telling too, right? Of a different
But
problem.
it's I think it's just because I think it's also because and I feel like it's not fair to I feel like it wouldn't be fair if I didn't bring this up. Horror historically has not been taken seriously.
No,
So when you do present these things within a horror context, no one would listen regardless. It don't matter if he was. It wouldn't have mattered if Blade was white. It wouldn't have
not at all.
mattered if Blade was Japanese. If Blade was a woman. If Blade, it wouldn't have mattered if Blade was curing cancer. It wouldn't have mattered because at the end of the day, it's vampires,
Not only that,
and no one's gonna take it that seriously.
it's
It's as
it's it's
simple as that. They'll
it's
take Goodfellas seriously more before they take Blade seriously.
it's not just horror. Also, it's every single genre that's fused into Blade, like fucking.
Remember I told you, remember a long time ago, I was like, it's so interesting that once someone starts seeing martial arts in a movie, the level of seriousness they take it is decreased.
Yeah. Once
I
again,
still think that.
no, I know that. That's why I like. That's why I make video essays like going into the historical context of Hong Kong cinema, not just like, oh man, karate chop. The fuck out of here. I'm not talking about that bullshit. Like, I think one time you was like, yo, you should do like play by plays of like fight scenes in movies, and I'm like, I respectfully declined because I feel like
Yeah,
in
you
order
told me, yeah.
in order to fully all right, between me and you, like, and I mean, like, what me and you do, because you do more lore content and I do more like analysis. All we're trying to do is legitimize genres that we've loved all of our lives.
Yeah,
You know what I'm
yeah. Because
saying?
that's when I even when I saw Deadpool and I saw once again when I saw Blade in Deadpool and just seeing him again in Deadpool and then him and seeing him fight Azazel, which I still bring up because I mean, what keep up is just to be insane. But I just say that to say from watching Deadpool from beginning to end, watching something like Blade to me is the same as a film fan. It's the same as if I watched the Maltese Falcon. It's the
Yeah.
same as if I watched North by Northwest. It's the same as if I watched Some Like It Hot. All of it to me is cinema. The same as if I watched Jurassic Park. Because because what the movies are they allow your dreams to become a reality. They allow dreams to exist in some way, shape, or form. and either that dream be a drama of love or be a dude hunting vampires. It's all to me. It's all cool. That's to me. It's just the spectrum of cinema. So when people say superhero movies aren't cinema, I'm just like, no, they are. They're just on the spectrum of cinema. Cinema is a spectrum. It's not just one thing. You can still get so much potent love out of action scenes as the same as you can get out of as long as there's meaning behind the action. And with Blade, there was always a meaning behind the action that's being done in those films.
Agreed.
Always.
So
And you
and so okay.
cannot you can't drive action without meaning.
I want to touch on two things before we start to wrap up, even though this part will be turned into a whole different other rant between the two of us. But the whole like what we're talking about, right, is legitimizing fringe genres in cinema, right? And Blade definitely represents all of that because it's martial arts, horror, and honestly, it's black exploitation. And people don't.
It's a
It,
level of black exploitation
it's
that it
postmodern.
has right. It's on the problem though is that it's the only one of its kind.
So I want to talk about why certain Blade properties did not work. And you're going to keep on hearing me talk about intersectionality, right? So we talk about Blade Trinity and, oh, it was bad and this, that, and the third. The main reason that Blade Trinity did not work is because it failed at doing what the other Blade films did prior. For one, it had very poor themes of like class conflict. It really did. Like all like the whole Dracula shit, that shit was corny because he wasn't a potent villain. He didn't have any presence. But also, there's very little multiculturalism in that last Blade. It's literally Blade and the Night Stalkers, and they're all white. If you look at the other Blade movies, Karen Jensen, a black woman, Whistler is white, Blade is black. So multiculturalism, multiracial component, right? When you look at Blade 2, that shit is damn near the Fast and Furious because you got Hungarian motherfuckers, you got Donnie in there, you got Chilean members of the what was that group called? The Blood Pack, the group that was hunting Blade. So when you get to the third Blade, it's thematically vacant. It's vacant in terms of like intersectionality. That's why that movie failed. That movie didn't fail because Wesley Snipes was having tax problems. It failed because the thing that made Blade work was not injected into Blade Trinity, and that is multiculturalism, thematic intersectionality, all of these different themes, like multi genres of film and shit like that. It didn't work. When you get to the Sticky Finger show, it's just the furthest extension of that. It's a very bland fucking TV show. It's not kinetic. Sticky Finger should never have been cast as no goddamn motherfucking Blade. Because once again, what defines Blade? A bestial samurai with like suave swagger and drip or whatever you want to call it, but also just body language. You know what I'm saying? Like, Blade walked
Also,
into
you
a
got to
room.
look at.
No, you got it.
No, go ahead. No, I was going
I
to
would
say
say
you have
you.
to look at. Um,
No, go ahead.
sorry, you got to look at like trying to do multiple things at once, but you have to look at like how that looks in context. Blade disappears after Blade. Trinity. Blade is gone. There's no Blade, and then what was it? Who did this? Was it TNT?
Spike TV did the Blade movie.
Spike
No,
TV.
no, they did the Blade TV show with Sticky Fingers.
And you got to understand at this time in the lifespan of the entertainment industry, Spike TV is not like prestige television at fucking all. No one saw it that way. No one looked at Spike TV and was like, ah, yes, this is where I go to watch The Wire or The Sopranos. No. So when Sticky Fingers shows up as Blade, and I'm like, who the bro? I'm like, who the fuck? What? This dude looks this what this? And then Marvel Comics has the nerve to then start matching what he looks like to what Blade looks like in the comics. Oh, but you changed that real quick, and then you went back to what Wesley Snipes looks like, and Blade has favorite Wesley Snipes to this day.
Yeah. Even
because
though,
they know that you can't escape that. You can't. It's there's something about. I think it happens more potently in entertainment because a lot more artistic flair and a lot more spiritual flair is there. But there's something about just a soul bonding moment to art. And I think that expresses itself in things like how Hugh Jackman is Wolverine. Not because we've had him for so long, but because look at just he is Wolverine. Ryan Reynolds is Deadpool. Wesley Snipes is Blade. Because the thing about Wesley Snipes' Blade is that that Blade is movie Blade. That was never comic book Blade until Wesley Snipes made it so. So it's so hard to copy that because it was born it wasn't it's not an amalgamation of various Marvel storylines over the years to get this one character going on the screen the way everybody else is. It's no, we have to follow a class act that was done like that superseded the comics altogether.
yeah, but so what you were saying about Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman and Wesley Snipes too, you know the most recurring thing that makes those actors so definitive in those roles, it's body language. And me saying body language might sound like such a small, like, why the fuck you keep bringing up body language? But it's like
It's
body
true,
language
you're right.
is so important because
Yeah.
you know that Deadpool walks in a room. You know that Ryan Reynolds as Deadpool walks into a room and he ain't got to say shit. And Deadpool's
You
whole
know the
MO is
way
that he
Heath
talk.
Ledger moves when he's the Joker.
Yeah, it's body language because body language is one of the most important aspects of acting because the words you say don't mean shit until you inject physicality into it. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? And with once again, with someone like Wesley Snipes versus somebody like let's say Sticky Fingers, who also played Blade, right? Sticky Fingers don't have the body language. He doesn't have that presence that Wesley Snipes had. And honestly, neither does Mahershala Ali. And I fuck with Mahershala Ali. I thought he killed it as Cottonmouth. That he should have stayed that motherfucker. Fuck Blade. Like he should have been. He
But
should have kept being.
that's my thing. They think that it's the same reason why I have beef with the new Crow. Not beef, because I'm still going to see that movie regardless. I'm still see it. But it's just how I have some issues. You look at this character and you think that it's just some guy in black. It's cool. That's all we need to do, and it's not. You think it is because that's all you see. Because once again, every time horror is put into the picture, no one sees the beauty, no one sees the layers. They only see the blood, and that's it. They don't see nothing else. And you can't make horror like that. You just can't. Even
No.
Jason loves it. Even Jason loves his mother. Like, come on. Like, it's not. It's everything Jason does is because of his mother. Is because of pain. That's from somewhere. But you just think, oh, we'll just make if we do. Oh, it's just killing and blood. Of course, but not that. That comes after. That doesn't come first. Even with Blade. Oh well, rehearsal's like, well, I can do it. I'm cool. I got okay, but can you do it? Like, can you do it? Do it. Because what if you don't have the? You have to have the. You have to have the whole package.
Yeah. And he
One could
don't.
just say that that was just the product of his era. I mean, I'm not saying you can't continue, but it will always not hold a candle. If unless you do it right, I'm not personally convinced Marvel can do it right because there are freedoms and there's also '90s sensibilities that were had back then, 2000s sensibilities that were had back then that allowed those films to be what they were. The the culture of movie making back then that allowed those films to be what they were. That is not the same era today. So that's one of the big reasons why I also think that Blade is having so much trouble today. as a film because yeah, because it's just not it's the culture is different. And not culture as in like cultural work culture, but culture is in the Hollywood culture of what they think a blockbuster movie needs to look like.
Yeah. No, that's a
Especially
very
when Marvel uses, especially Marvel when with
well,
the way Marvel functions nowadays too, previs, no, it's a different world, man.
and where you come from. Sorry, I had to throw that in there.
Yeah, but yeah,
Yeah.
that's my
So do you have any like closing thoughts on like Blade? Because we've talked about an hour and 46 minutes. This is beautiful, actually. Like this is gonna be fun to edit because
that's
I'm
fine.
not gonna. You said what?
No, I mean no, honestly, I mean we've said everything. I just want people to just sometimes I think because also that Blade is horror that it can have all those elements and still work because horror is so multifaceted of a genre that it gets slept on. So people don't think that it can incorporate s- the themes that Blade incorporates. So at first glance, you may see a man just hunting vampires and killing vampires, but even in Blade, even in the Blade movies, it, even in the first Blade, Blade is said it himself. You need to look beneath. You can actually see. You need to look beneath everything. I'm paraphrasing, but there's a world under the world that you think exists, and that goes a lot for films in general. There's more to a movie than just the coolness. There's more to a character than just the quote unquote coolness. There's more to a film than just the blood and the action and whatever. And Blade is a shining example of that. That's it.
It definitely is. Like I personally, more than anything, I would actually love to see a Blade animated series. Like forget the comics, even forget the movies. Like I would love to see a Blade animated movie, like animated series, because I feel like that would actually add a lot more legitimacy to Blade, like as a character with significant lore. Because I think that's
Yeah, I agree.
uh, one of the other things that kind of holds the character back is that you have a couple of comic books that probably ran for like 30 issues spread out between like 45 years, and you have three movies and two of them were good, and then like a crappy TV show that don't count. And it's like, where's the lore of Blade? Like, in order for lore to exist, there has to be some type of longevity. And I feel like
Yeah,
television is a good place to get longevity to build that lore. And then, what you were saying about kind of giving Blade other types of villains to fight besides vampires. Television and anime, that's a perfect place to do that shit. For real, for real. Like honestly, I think there should be a Blade animated series done in the same style as Afro Samurai, like that with that animation style. Something very authentically black, but something also very Japanese to once again hit that intersection between those two
yeah.
demographics. You know what I mean? I think that's my wish. That's what I would like to see happen with Blade. Like I
Well,
don't
the thing is, there was a Blade anime that
anime.
came out. It
It
was not.
was
I didn't. I don't know. Something about it I didn't gravitate towards because I don't. I have
it
I
was
have
a
a
gimmick.
weird ick. Yeah, a lot of Japanese adaptations of American things are gimmicky. It
It
doesn't
wasn't.
feel authentic.
Yeah, I was gonna say it was that anime. I remember when it came. I think I have them shits in here on DVD somewhere. Like the X-Men one and the Wolverine one and the Blade, they were not
Yeah,
authentic because they were writing an aesthetic, and aesthetics only carry you so far. Like along with the
yeah,
aesthetics, you need thematic resonance. And imagine a Blade animated series that's similar to like the Cape Crusader or something along or similar to Invincible, even X-Men 97, right? With that type of care given to that character and to his mythology. You know what I mean? I think
yeah,
that's the thing that would really help Blade to resonate more than a movie. You know what I mean? And I know that sounds crazy to
Yeah.
some people, but look at what
But
happened with
but no, you're right with
yeah,
X-Men
look,
97.
yeah, I was saying, look what happened with X-Men 97. Like X-Men 97 single-handedly made the X-Men relevant again. Even
Yeah.
more so than like the Krakoa era. Because once again, comic books are niche. So as
Yeah.
good as those stories were, shit wasn't penetrating the culture like X-Men 97 was. This shit was
If
shit.
he had a good if Blade had a good team, writers, and a showrunner that could really tell a good action, a horror,
So
animated adventure, type thing, I think that that would be it would look like a step down, but I don't think it would be.
it wouldn't be.
Nowadays, it wouldn't be.
It wouldn't be, but the person I have in mind to be the showrunner of this Blade thing that we're discussing is somebody, and when I say their name, you might be like, what? But hear me out.
Okay, let me stop the podcast right here. So there's a portion of this episode of the Omnicast where I discuss who I think should write a Blade animated series, and that individual is someone who is a controversial figure at this point in time. So at the point in time that this podcast was recorded, we didn't have a lot of information regarding allegations of sexual harassment from writer and producer Bo DeMaio of X-Men 97 fame. So when I'm discussing the potential plans for what he, should do, and the fact that I think that he should come on to write and be the showrunner of a Blade animated series, I had no idea about any of the horrendous and traumatic allegations that have been lobbied towards him. Now, I'm also not really in a position to take any sides because I don't work for Disney. I didn't work on X-Men 97. I don't know Bo DeMaio at all. Never spoken to this man, never spoken to anyone involved in any of this. This particular video was pure speculation. But the reason that I wanted to interject right here is because I want to make sure that I inform the people that are watching this that I am in no way advocating, supporting, or taking sides in anything involving what's happening right now with Bo DeMaio and the harassment allegations and anything with Disney. I'm simply just, or at the point in time when this was recorded, I was just doing like little speculative conversations, which is something that people that are into things like comics and animation tend to do very often. I do want to express my deepest heartfelt sympathies with anyone who's been negatively affected from any type of sexual harassment or abuse. Nobody here on this channel supports or condones any type of harassment towards anybody, whether you're gay, straight, whatever race, gender you are. We want to make sure that we acknowledge the suffering and the trauma that has been caused by situations such as what's being alleged by parties that are doing the alleging. So, with that being said, just give us a bit of grace, or give me a bit of grace, because I'm really the one that was leading the charge in terms of recommending or even insinuating that Bo DeMaio should do anything within a writing capacity, given the allegations that have been brought upon to him, towards him, or whatever you want to call it. So yeah, the goal of this channel is to never offend. It's always to be an entertaining, insightful, and engaging YouTube channel. And with that being said, we're going to continue the conversation. Peace.
Bo DeMaio. Bo DeMaio is perfect for a Blade animated series on Disney Plus, given like his sensibilities. Because I know everybody knows him from X Men, but he actually did. He got his start writing for a spinoff of the Vampire Diaries called The Originals. That's where he got his
Mm,
start, like in the joint. So that's horror. So everybody has
yeah.
that
I
background.
didn't know he was
Plus,
on the originals.
you said
A
what?
writer. I didn't know he was a writer on the original.
Bro, 23
Well, he was
episodes.
like, oh damn, oh damn, damn.
Yeah. Not
He
only
wrote the
that,
staff.
not only that, right? He understands comics. He's a comic book guy, But
Yeah.
also, I was on Twitter the other day, and this motherfucker Bo DeMaio just wrote out a pitch for a Blade movie, and it was like the illest shit ever.
Wait, wait, what did he say?
He had like I think Brother Voodoo was in it, and it was like a lot of shit. I don't know. I can't recall. I didn't save the post, but I was like reading this. I'm like, no, this is this, fuck X-Men, nigga. Go do fucking Blade. Like, the fuck
But see, that's what I'm saying. I know we gotta wrap up, but that's what I'm
you-
saying. Because you have the Marvel Cinematic Universe now, lean into his world. You Blade, those movies were the way they were because you did not have the MCU. You didn't have all Marvel could they could only use what they could use with Blade. They didn't have all of Marvel comics behind them to use in those movies. Now you do. Why hasn't
dog,
Blade shown up? Why has Blade shown up in the Eternals, but it is nowhere in Doctor Strange? That doesn't
bruh,
make sense.
it doesn't. But I'm still
That's
stuck
like
on.
you put America Chavez in Doctor Strange before you put Blade in Doctor Strange. You put a cosmic character that has nothing to do with any of that in Doctor. That's a different. Never mind. That's a different
That's a
story.
different
But still,
conversation. Yeah, because yeah, but I'm once again I'm still stuck on the Bo DeMaio Blade shit because I'm like that dog
no, I agree. Yeah, that'd be cool.
the shit that I have in my brain for Bo DeMaio to work with for how he would approach and how I would approach a Blade project. That shit would be a game changer, straight up. Like that shit would be a motherfucking game changer because that's what that's I think that medium I think Blade would thrive in that medium more so than in the movies because then you don't have to worry about trying to find an actor that embodies all this different shit that Wesley Snipes had that's essential for
I'd
the
get
character
Wesley
too.
Snipes back
Yeah, exactly. You can have that
as a
motherfucker.
voice.
Bro. You could even have Wesley Snipes do a British version of Blade
Yeah.
and as a voice. You could even do that. Fuck it. You could even have Mahershala Ali do the shit. It's so much
No,
you
he ain't
can
gonna do it.
do
No, he ain't gonna do
with
it.
animation, and I feel like he's the perfect like he's the perfect vessel for that because in my mind Blade is a unique mixture of Hellsing and Usagi Yojimbo. And I know that sounds so fucking radically unusual, but yeah, he's a fucking samurai, a Ronin samurai black motherfucker that hunt vampires. Like that's
The thing is, because yeah, like Blade, if for me, I'm like you would need, and not Helsing. Helsing has this is where the intersectionality, like you say, comes in. Helsing has a swagger to it
yeah,
that a Blade would need. There's a swagger to Helsing that only Helsing can do that Blade could benefit from with that inspiration, not copy, but inspiration, how you can handle that world and how you can present vampires. Blade has also fought Nazis, so just saying, it's not impossible. And also Blade's abilities and the abilities of the vampires that he fights. Because I'm like, y'all can't. You need to start giving vampires more abilities. Castlevania already has done it, but once again, that's also anime based, Japanese based. So it's like it's just you gotta look. You can't be like, oh well, we can just make just no, just dude, just watch anime. Just watch some horror anime, and you can find what your vision through that. Like that's what that would be one of my inspirations. That would be one of my first go tos. I'd be like, let me watch some horror anime first. Then if y'all want to make a Blade movie, and you want me to make it, you not only want to talk. Your goal is, and I'm just being real. Your goal is to not only top Wesley Snipes' movies, but your new goal now is to elevate the cinema and elevate the MCU. You gotta look east. You gotta
yeah.
look east. You
But
just
once
have to.
again, like, and the funny thing is, Blade did that originally because once again, you have a black vampire hunter that's a samurai. Like that,
Yeah.
yeah, it's already
You know
there.
what
It's
though?
not.
You have to look east and you have to look yeah, all east. Actually all of Asia. I'm talking about Indian imagery. I'm talking about just Buddhist imagery, just imagery. Imagery to me is so important to cinema that I just think people just, you don't understand how imagery it's beautiful. Prime example. And I don't want to. I'm not bagging on Marvel, but if you look at the lighting and how gorgeous Sam looks, his suit, the white Captain America suit in fucking Falcon and Winter Soldier, that night scene when he first shows up,
Yeah.
that nigga looked like an angel because he's Captain America.
Yeah.
And then they darken the suit in in New World in Brave New World. It's now super dark. Oh, the wings are dark. The whole thing is dark, and I'm like, is he a beacon of anything now? He's an eagle. He's a
I'm
falcon. Just I don't know. I just that like little stuff like that to me just bothers me. Even Zazie Beats when they made Zazie when they made her Domino, and I was like, okay, that's fine that she's Domino, but just make her skin white. Oh no, that's gonna make people upset, and white people are saying that that's white face, so we don't want to make them upset. And notice how black people didn't have an uproar about that though, and turn into a culture war. But anyway, um, we're just gonna say that she had vitiligo, or you could tell them to go fuck themselves and make Zazie Beats have the actual color white skin because that's a part of Domino's mutation. How are you claiming that you want to be diverse and inclusive or whatever the fuck, but you want to take away the genetics of a character that's supposed to represent that type of stuff? That was so backwards to me. And that's what I'm saying. Like you have to let cinema grow, and cinema cannot grow if you keep making safe decisions. And I think that Blade cannot be made through safe decisions. I
mm-mm.
think Marvel is doing that. And that's why they keep running to a freaking wall. Okay, now I'm done.
Well, bars. What bar? Those are bars to close out on. Yeah, this was great, actually. I feel like we haven't done one of these in a very long time. I don't know why, but um, man, all I can say is thank you for listening, everyone.
Yes, to
Yeah,
our
because
to our tirades.
no, this is great, dog. Like these, I enjoy doing these actually, like because they're a lot easier to do than like fucking making videos. Like make videos hard as shit. Like that's a whole nother
Yeah,
fucking
that's just
podcast.
tough.
Yeah, like I was explaining to somebody like the Drunken Master video. That shit took like a year for me to make. Like,
Oh yeah, you told me.
yeah, so
I was there.
you said what?
I was there.
Yeah, so it's like, nah, these are cool. But yeah, let's go ahead and sign off and let these people go ahead and finish living their lives. But we just wanted to give people something to think about when it comes to Blade, and I think we did a pretty good job. How about you?
Yeah, no, definitely. Go watch Blade 1 and 2.
Not, yeah, one and two, not the Sticky Fingers one. Hell, watch Blade Trinity because Blade Trinity is not as bad as it seems, but I'm not going into that right now because then that'll take another 30 fucking minutes.
I'm
But
gonna pretend. I'm gonna pretend like all of that you just said never happened.
okay.
Yeah.
All right then. All right. Cytonia signing off and
Peace.
all right, peace.